Hi ladies, here I am again. It's me, Lynette Anderson from Australia, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the fact that I made a yo-yo or a Suffolk puff for the little bunny's tails on month 6. I like to actually make them by hand rather than using one of those little gadgets, and the first thing you're going to do is you're going to make a template from template plastic. That gives you a nice tough thing that you're going to be able to draw around several times. Although we're only making 2 tails for our bunnies, you might want to use them at some other stage down the track. Once you've made your template, you're going to just draw around it. The seam allowance is actually included in the template, so draw around the template and cut out on the line. Once you've cut out on the line, you're going to thread a needle up with some thread, and you're going to put a small knot in one end. Now, because of where we're going to start stitching, you actually need to cut that off fairly close to the knot, so there's only a tiny little tail there. We're going to carefully turn to the wrong side, somewhere between 1/8 and 1/4 inch, and you're going to put your first stitch in. Now you're going to notice that my first stitch is going from what is the wrong side, which will mean that little tail that we've just trimmed will ultimately be on the inside of our yo-yo. Now my stitches, as I turn the edge under with my left hand, I'm actually doing a small running stitch. When I say small, don't make them too small, because what happens then is when you go to pull your yo-yo up, it doesn't actually pull up very nicely. So my stitches are approximately 1/4 inch, and notice I'm stitching between the raw edge and the fold. I'm stitching right in the center of that, and it does seem to be quite important that you do that. So we're going to continue turning the edge, and as we turn the edge, I'm just going to do that small running stitch. Now it doesn't have to be like a measured amount that we're turning in, it just needs to be that we're turning it in. And it's because I actually don't like the raw fabric sticking out the centers of my yo-yos. I know on some very primitive quilts you might like that effect, but for this particular thing, project, I didn't want that to be happening. So I'm just going to carry on stitching around. I'm trying to make my stitches in the middle of where the cut edge is and the folded line is, and they're roughly 1/4 inch long. And here we go, we're almost back to where we started. Once you get back to where you started, what we need to do is pull the thread through to what will be the front of our work. So here's my last stitch going in now, and I'm going to come through to this side, and as I do that I'm going to catch hold of the thread, put my thumb to give some shape in the middle, and just slowly start pulling up. Now you need to start forming your yo-yos. You know, they don't just fall into place, you need to give them some little encouragement to be the shape that you want them to be. So I always say wriggle them into position until you've got that nice little shape that you want. Nice and circular. Give them a wriggle. See how nicely that's formed? Make sure you've pulled that thread nice and tight. Now I'm going to stitch my thread right through to the back, and I'm going to actually end off that thread and just cut it off. It can't really come undone, so it's relatively safe, and then I can actually admire my little yo-yo that I just made. Now there's a little bit of a piece there that I want to pull out with my needle, just so I've got a nice pleat, and I think that's going to make a very nice little rabbit's tail. Now when I stitch these on, I'm actually going to use the blind hem stitch the same way as we have been appliquing the other shapes. So I'm going to stitch right round the edge of there so that it's entirely stitched in place where I want it. Beautiful. Now you're going to ask me about that quilt behind me again today, aren't you? The quilt behind me is called Fox and Friends. Mr. Fox, and he's got several friends. The squirrels are his friends and the birds are his friends. I've used my brand new, out in the stores right now, fabric collection, which is called Spiced Pumpkin. It's all these wonderful warm tones. Again, I've mixed it with some of my bread and butter creams to create this lovely look. I've done hand applique using the soft fuse and some interesting embroidery stitches here and there, and little log cabins really pull the whole design together. It's available as a pattern, but the really exciting thing is that RJR Fabrics have actually got laser cut shapes. So you can actually buy a kit with all of the shapes pre-cut for you. They've got the soft fuse on the back, so it's literally a case of pulling that paper backing off, putting them into position, fusing them down, and then you can either machine or hand stitch them in place. And I love a kit that's really quick to make. A lot of the questions this month have been, what is the black mat that I'm working on? It's a fabulous product I found when I was in Japan last. It's a lovely soft rubber. It's been designed for you to work on, and although I didn't think I'd like working on black, I actually really like it. I find it's really the modern equivalent of the sandpaper board, but it doesn't annoy you and it doesn't ruin your nails. I store mine by just rolling it up like that and popping it in my workbox. If you're doing a lot of the glue stick applique on it, you will find the glue does get all over it, and I have just literally washed this one by putting it in some warm water in my kitchen sink, swishing it around a bit until all of the glue's lifted off, left it to dry on a tea towel, and it's as good as new. Thanks for joining me today. I hope to see you next month.